On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC 303 main event between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler taking place June 29th in Las Vegas. And if you never watched the show before, my name is James Lynch. I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles. Then I'm going to give you my pick here at the end and my prediction. Some of the stuff may have relevance, it may not. You can decide that in the comments. Would love to hear your prediction for this fight after I'm done the video. Would love to hear how you think this one unfolds. A really close fight. Big event. It's great to see Conor McGregor back and great to see this fight actually get booked. There was a lot of speculation this might not happen. Let's do a quick tail of the tape between these two fighters here. Conor McGregor, you can see 22-6. Michael Chandler, 23-8, 35-38. 5'9" to 5'8", 74 to 71.5. So McGregor going to be a little bit taller, has a little bit of a reach advantage. He's also a couple of years younger than Michael Chandler. Let's start first with the notorious Conor McGregor, the former double champion in the UFC. You can see the picture there. So Conor McGregor not currently ranked right now because he's been out for a while. We'll talk about that in a second. Conor McGregor with his 22-6 record has 19 knockouts, 1 submission, and 2 decisions. Like I mentioned, they're 35 years old, 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. So he's 2.5 years younger than Chandler. He's got a 1-inch height and 3.5-inch reach. He's going to be turning 36 on July 14th. He's a BJJ black belt under John Kavanagh. Take that for what it's worth. He's a southpaw and he trains out of SBG Ireland. He's the former interim UFC featherweight champion, also the former legit undisputed featherweight champion. He's also the former UFC lightweight champion as well. He's got fight of the night 2 times against Nate Diaz. He's got knockout of the night 1 time against Marcus Brimage. And he's got performance of the night 7 times against Diego Brandao, Dustin Poirier, Dennis Seaver, Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, Eddie Alvarez, and Donald Cowboy Cerrone. McGregor, I should say, made his amateur debut way back in February of 2007, made his pro debut a year after that in March of 2008, made his UFC debut in April of 2013. He is currently 10-4 in the UFC. He's got 8 stoppage wins. Some notable wins include Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, Nate Diaz, and Eddie Alvarez. Some notable losses include Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier, two losses, Dustin Poirier, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. The big story with this fight, I think, is the layoffs. And it's not the first time McGregor's had a layoff in his career. Let's go through this. And this first layoff, I mean, if you look at McGregor's earlier career, he was fighting 2-3 times a year. That basically stopped once he won the lightweight title. So going from Eddie Alvarez to Floyd Mayweather, we will count this. I know it's a boxing match, not an MMA fight, but he was in a training camp for that. It's not like he was sitting on the couch. Going from Alvarez to Mayweather, there was a 287-day layoff. Going from Mayweather to Khabib, there was a 406-day layoff. So the biggest layoff of McGregor's career happened back then. And then going from Khabib to Cowboy, there was a 469-day layoff. Going from Cowboy to Poirier, there was a 371-day layoff. And then the big one, going from the third Dustin Poirier fight, not the second, because obviously that's the third fight with Dustin Poirier. Going from that fight at UFC 264 to Michael Chandler at UFC 303, there will be a 1,085-day layoff for Conor McGregor, the longest in his career, not even close. The second longest layoff he had, like I said, was 469 days from Khabib to Cowboy. So huge layoff coming into this fight. We'll see how McGregor looks. McGregor's only ever been in one close fight in his career. That was the Nate Diaz fight, the rematch at UFC 202. A majority decision win there for McGregor. If you go look on MMAdecisions.com, which is a website where media members can submit their scorecards, I went back and looked at that. 14 media members scoring the fight for McGregor, 4 scoring it a draw, and 1 scoring it for Nate Diaz. So again, majority did feel like McGregor got that one done. Let's go look at some stats for Conor McGregor. Pretty impressive. 5.32 strikes landed per minute. His striking accuracy is at 49%, so he does hit the mark decently. His striking defense is at 54. So, he does get hit, but not as much as you'd think. His takedown average is at 0.67. Doesn't do a ton of those. His takedown accuracy is at 55%. His takedown defense is at 66%. We'll see how that holds up in this fight, or if this fight even goes that way with Michael Chandler. So again, the most popular fighter in UFC history. It's great to see Conor back, regardless of what you feel about him. This is going to be a big fight. It's always got that big fight feel when Conor McGregor competes. So that is everything you need to know about the notorious Conor McGregor. Let's talk about his opponent, Michael Chandler, the former Bellator lightweight champion. You can see Iron Mike there, 23-8. He's got 10 knockouts, 7 submissions, and 5 decisions. He's 38 years old. He's 5'8" with a 71.5-inch reach, so no advantages as far as age, height, or reach. He's currently ranked number 6 in the lightweight division. Did forget to mention, this fight is at welterweight. It's going to be 5 rounds. So again, Chandler going to be moving up for this fight. He's had all of his UFC fights at 155. So again, 170. If you look at the rest of them there, lightweight, 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 and lightweight. So this will be Chandler moving up as well, which might actually be better for Chandler. He does cut a lot of weight. I mentioned it there. Chandler is the 3-time Bellator lightweight champion. He's also the season 4 lightweight tournament winner for Bellator as well, back when they used to do the tournaments. He's a former NCAA Division I wrestler at the University of Missouri. He trains out of a little bit out of Killcliff and then also to Nashville MMA. He's got performance of the night 2 times against Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson. He's also got fight of the night 2 times against Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. Chandler did not have an amateur debut. He went straight from the wrestling ranks right to fighting pro MMA. That was back in August of 2009. Made his UFC debut in January of 2021. But keep in mind, he's made his Bellator debut just 4 fights into his career. And this was back when Bellator had, some big names as well. So, definitely sort of learning on the job, but fighting some pretty good opposition along the way. I mean, consider that his 7th fight, he fought Patricky Pitbull, who at the time, a little bit more experience. Also fought Eddie Alvarez in his 8th fight, a fight that he ended up winning. Some notable wins. So Chandler in the UFC, let's talk about that real quick. It hasn't been a long tenure for him. Chandler, if you look at it there, his UFC record is 2-3. He's only got 2 wins. Dan Hooker, Tony Ferguson. His losses are Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, and Dustin Poirier. Like I said, there are notable wins for him. For Michael Chandler. Chandler, 2-3 in the UFC. He's got 2 stoppage wins. Some notable wins include Dan Hooker, Eddie Alvarez. I put Benson Henderson there just because, people know him. He's the former UFC lightweight champion. But let's get real here. Benson Henderson was close to retiring at that point. He did retire, in fact, a couple fights after that. So I don't really count that as like a big win for him. The Eddie Alvarez win was great at the time, considering he beat Alvarez in Bellator, and then Alvarez went to UFC after that and won a UFC title. So to me, that's a good win for him back then. He also lost Eddie Alvarez as well. We'll talk about some of the losses. And then you obviously beat Tony Ferguson as well, which is a notable win because it's Tony, but as far as like that is like a quality win, not so much. Some notable losses for Chandler. You can see it there. Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira. He also lost to Patricio Pitbull in Bellator as well. I think people forget about that. That was in 2019, so not that long ago. Also lost to Eddie Alvarez, and he also had 2 losses to Will Brooks. And then his last fight, he also lost as well. He got finished by Dustin Poirier in the 3rd round, so they do have that common opponent in Dustin Poirier. This will be one of the longest layoffs in Chandler's career. Going from Poirier to McGregor, there'll be a 595-day layoff. If you look at the longest layoff he had prior to that, remember there was the fight with Brent Primus where he got injured. He ended up being out close to a year, but not a full year, 2017 to 2018. So not a ton of layoffs throughout Chandler's career compared to McGregor anyways. McGregor with a lot more layoffs. Chandler's been in a couple close fights, not in the UFC though. Did want to mention them because I think that's, good to point out. So the Eddie Alvarez win that Alvarez got at Bellator 106, this was back in November of 2013. 3D media members scored the fight for Alvarez, 10 scored it for Chandler. So realistically, Chandler should have 2 wins over Eddie Alvarez, not 1. But then on the flip side, we have not on the flip side. Then the other loss that Chandler had to Will Brooks, I mentioned he lost to him twice. That was the fight at Bellator 120 in May of 2014. Let's find it there. Just want to mention this because, again, if you look at his record, you do want to know sort of the context of wins and losses. So at Bellator 120, 1 media member scored the fight for Brooks, 7 scored it a draw, and 5 scored it for Chandler. So again, people feeling like that shouldn't have been a loss. So both these losses that Chandler had realistically could have been wins. He did legit get knocked out by Will Brooks a couple fights after that, but just want to point that out. So there is a habit here of Chandler being knocked out. He has been knocked out 4 times in his career, which for a guy like McGregor who hits very hard could be very interesting here. Let's look at Chandler's stats in the UFC. Very impressive. 4.89 striking accuracy, or significant strikes landed per minute, 46% striking accuracy. Striking defense is at 46%, so not great. His takedown average is at 2.17, so he does get a lot of takedowns. His takedown accuracy, though, only 38%, and his takedown defense is at 71%, although I doubt McGregor is going to shoot for a takedown. Let's look at the odds for this fight. You can see odds are pretty close. McGregor, on some books, being the favorite, like on BetMGM, Betway having him as a favorite, but you look at DraftKings having him at like the underdog, slight underdog at -102. So this has been going back and forth. The book that I use, Bodog, has it currently even now at -110. So this fight is fairly even, but Tapology tells a similar story. McGregor with a slight edge here on the fan. This is just fan voting, by the way. You just have to go in there and vote. 55% of people picking McGregor, 45% picking Chandler. So this fight's tough. It is. Like, this is it's a tough fight because you have 2 older fighters, 2 fighters coming off layoffs. McGregor obviously having the longer layoff. And like I said, the style matchup would favor McGregor, but ultimately I think Chandler's going to win this fight. Now here's why. I really thought about this hard and kind of tried to figure out which way I wanted to go on this. But I'm going to go Chandler, and I'm going to go by 4th round knockout. Now, here's why. Okay. Couple things that I want to point out as to why I'm going Chandler 4th round knockout. And again, give me your prediction in the comments, hear what I have to say, and then give your prediction in the comments. So to me, it's the layoff. McGregor was such a huge layoff. Like I mentioned, 1,085 days. That is a big factor in this fight. McGregor has not been active in the last couple of years. Chandler has. That I think is a plus for Chandler. McGregor filmed a movie last year. There's also all the outside stuff, him partying, all this different stuff. Now, I think people made too much of a deal out of the video that was released, this past week, and we're recording this on May 29th, so keep that in mind. That was the one of McGregor in the club. Didn't look like he was wasted or on drugs. It just looked like he was having a good time at the club. I don't put too much stock into that, but you think Chandler's out doing that? No, he's probably in the gym. So again, McGregor has had, numerous run-ins with the law, all types of different stuff where he's drinking and doing all that. That may or may not affect him, but it's still not something positive. So I do have to mention that as well. Here's another thing that I think people got to realize, because again, this fight's at 170. McGregor's only had one stoppage win at 170, and that was against Donald Cowboy Cerrone, a fighter who has been finished a number of times, right? And that was the shoulder one, right? Where he did he did the head kick, and he did the shoulder, which kind of rocked Cerrone, and he did the head kick and punches. But Cerrone, if you look at it there, how many fights did Cerrone have after McGregor? It was a couple. It was like at least 5 or something, right? So you had 4 fights after McGregor. So kind of what I'm getting at is Cerrone was kind of on the tail end of his career. I guess you could say the same thing about Chandler, but at least Chandler, I don't know. Chandler's looked better than Cerrone looked at that stage in his career. So just one knockout loss. And so that makes me think, I don't think McGregor's going to finish Chandler early. He might, but I would argue that this fight being at 170, Chandler's cutting less weight. He's going to be less susceptible to being knocked out because he doesn't have to cut as much weight. So again, can McGregor do it? Yes. Will he do it? I don't think he will. I don't think he knocks out Chandler early. And to me, that's the best path to victory for Conor in this fight. 48% of Chandler's wins are by KO TKO. I know Chandler also has 7 submission wins as well. He might submit McGregor later in the fight. That could be a path to victory. But again, Chandler does have a lot of power in his shots. I could see him finishing McGregor early, later in the fight. Chandler has better wrestling and better ground game if he chooses to use it. Again, that's another reason to like Chandler here. If Chandler wanted to have a smart fight in this one, he could just out wrestle and take down McGregor, and that would be a path to victory. There is that option for him in this fight. So again, another reason why I think Chandler has the advantage. Chandler has more 5-round experience. He hasn't had any 5-round experience in the UFC, but he has fought 5 rounds in Bellator. I think that is something worth noting in his career, whereas McGregor, I believe, has just had the one 5-round fight against Nate Diaz. So again, Chandler more 5-round experience. I would tend to think that Chandler's gonna have more cardio in this fight too, if it goes a little bit longer. Chandler's never been knocked out at welterweight. If you look at all of his knockout losses, they've been at lightweight. Again, I think that contributes to the weight cut, him having a tough weight cut. We've seen Conor McGregor gas out before. His style is go in there, try and take care of business. We saw him gas out against Nate Diaz. We've seen him slow down in other fights as well. Chandler, yes, he's slowed down a little bit, but I also think that Chandler, like I said, if I had to put the cardio against each other, I think Chandler's got the better cardio. And the other thing is, the pressure's on Conor here. Like Chandler, what was the big narrative prior to this fight being booked? Chandler's dropping the ball. Chandler's fumbling the bag. I said all along this fight was going to happen. I also said that Chandler is really kind of playing with house money because he tried to win a UFC title, didn't happen. He's won a Bellator title. He's made some good money in the UFC. The fact that he gets to fight Conor is just icing on the cake for a guy who's already had a pretty good career here. Chandler loses, no big deal. He could have retired after losing to Poirier. He realistically could have, but now he's getting this big payday against Conor instead. Conor's lost before. He's coming off 2 losses heading into this fight. I still think the pressure's on him because how much more do people want to watch Conor McGregor fight if he keeps losing here? McGregor's got to win. His last win was Cerrone, and that was way back in 2020. That was 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago. So again, I think the pressure's on McGregor here. Chandler's not that much older either than McGregor. I mentioned it, 2.5 years. So there's not a huge age gap here either. And again, I think Chandler, when it comes to just the things that he's doing, it seems like he's a little bit more focused than McGregor is. Again, this is more of a guess, but that's what I would say as well. The last thing I'll mention is I don't think McGregor looked that good in either Poirier fight. The first Poirier fight, right? Conor, I believe, won that first round. I'd have to go back and rewatch it, but my memory serves correctly. I remember it being a short, close round, but then Poirier knocked him out cold in the second round. That was a fight that McGregor was supposed to win. He didn't win. And then in the rematch, or the trilogy, I should say, McGregor wasn't looking so good prior to breaking his ankle. I think Poirier was on his way to winning that round. Now, Poirier is great. And the time of recording this, Poirier is fighting Islam on Saturday. We'll see how he looks in that fight. But I think Poirier, even if he goes out there and gets finished in the first round by Islam on Saturday, is still a very good fighter. But I would argue that Chandler has fought, they have that common opponent. I think Chandler looked better against Poirier than McGregor did. I know MMA math is not the be-all end-all, but it is another factor in this fight. So that's another reason why I think Chandler takes this. So again, my prediction here is Conor's going to throw the kitchen sink at Chandler. Chandler will survive because it's 170. He's not cutting as much weight. He will probably, I would think he's going to at least go for one takedown or a couple takedowns here in this fight. And he survives the early onslaught and he plays the long game here. And then as the fight goes on, Chandler's going to have the better cardio. He can utilize that wrestling. He'll go for like a TKO finish late in the fight when Conor is getting tired and Chandler's going to finish and he gets it done. So I'm going to go Chandler 4th round knockout to get it done by ground and pound in this fight. Now, can Conor McGregor win this fight? Yes, he can. Conor McGregor's proved me. I picked Aldo against Conor. I picked Alvarez against Conor. I've been wrong a lot of times with Conor McGregor. I don't think that Conor exists. I hope that Conor comes back. I would love nothing more than Conor to win this fight because it's good for business. He is the most popular fighter in UFC history. When he is winning, everyone's watching the UFC more. The sport is elevated when Conor's doing well. But I just have a hard time with the money he's already made, the trouble he's been getting outside the cage, the fact that Chandler was not filming a movie last year and Conor was, so he's not getting the adequate training. And here's another thing I'll throw out there as well that isn't very positive for Conor. After his losses, we haven't seen much of a switch up. It's the same thing. He's working with Kavanaugh. He's working with his usual coaches. It's a lot of yes people. I think with Chandler, at least you've seen him go out of his comfort zone from going to different camps, switching things up a little bit, right? Training a bit at home, training at Killcliff. I think those are positive things. I think with Conor, I would have preferred Conor to maybe try some different coaching or some different things when he was losing against Poirier, and we haven't really seen that. So yeah, again, I'm going Chandler. Let me know your prediction in the comments. I don't want to hear your pick. I want to hear exactly how you think the fight plays out. We can have a good discussion in the comments. If there's any other fights you want me to preview, let me know. Obviously, I preview all the big fights that are coming up, big names, title fights, main events, all that. So let me know in the comments if there's anything else you want me to do. And that's all I got, guys. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.